Okay, guys, welcome back to Play and Explain episode 7. I believe it's episode 7, although I could be wrong about that. Back at the 200 zone tables, going to be playing for about half an hour. Just trying to get into some spots, find something interesting to talk about. We doubled up here on the right, Ace King, or sorry, with Kings versus Ace King, pretty much immediately, so that was nice. It was while I was setting the recording up. On the left here, going to be putting in the small bet with the overcards, backdoor flush draw, backdoor straight draw. There's just a lot of good turns that we can barrel on, and always want to be thinking about our backdoors whenever we have a hand. Poker it's too difficult to only think about made hands in poker, and so you do have to think about your backdoors as well. Once we turn the gutter, I'm just going to put in the double barrel, folding out some ace high, king high, queen high. A lot of good stuff. Our opponent can let go, and it's just really hard for villain to have a hand on this board. A lot of people are going to make the mistake of check raising too much 9x. And on the river here, interesting. Okay, on the river here, I don't believe he's going to go for this bet with a 9, and that's really my thesis for just ripping all in. I believe this is probably on the weak side. Probably him just trying to see a cheap showdown, and we don't want to give that to him. We want to put him on a spot. Here, once we c-bet, we get the nut flush draw and gut shot. We're going to check with the aim of check raising all in, just because betting and getting jammed on is kind of miserable. We just have to fold. Putting the 3-bet here. And once it goes check, check, this hand specifically, I'm just going to check and maybe do something. I might check with the intention of check raising here if he bets, but it doesn't come to that. Just really there liking that we block Jack X, liking that we block Ace Jack suited and Queen Jack suited, and that's really important. That's more important than the fact that we have spades, which is kind of bad. Like us blocking Jack X suited there is better than is uh is more of a positive factor than having spades as a negative factor. Is probably the best way to say it. Yeah, I think with the Jack 10 hand a couple hands ago, a lot of people would just auto fold the river without a thought, but you really have to think what villain's psychology there is like there, just leading the river for small. Like, does he really ever check call a 9 twice and then just randomly lead on the river? Like, probably not. Like, he's probably check raising the 9 on the flop, or check raising the 9 on the turn, or if he somehow has a 9, he just wants to bet and just let, or sorry, he just wants to check and like let me put in the bet instead. So I do think that's going to be quite imbalanced towards air. And when people are weak and they're capped, just putting them into a spot and putting the pressure on. I think this is the same guy earlier that we jammed the Jack 10 into. With the twos, I'm just going to fold. The SPR isn't deep enough for us to try do anything fancy here. Queen 9 will be putting in the 3-bet. Button versus cutoff, folding to a 4-bet though, and Ace Jack is just a standard squeeze out of position, making it a little bit bigger with the call here and the dead money. Facing the 4-bet with Queen 9, we're just going to fold. Not looking to call 4-bets with Queen 9 suited, but being 200 big blinds deep, we are doing a lot of calling. A lot of hands that we wouldn't normally call 100 big blinds deep to a 4-bet, we would call 200 big blinds deep just because of implied odds. Folding here with the Ace Jack to the back jam. Kind of want to see what's going on here. I suspect this is a lot of times probably just a low pocket pair, but I don't know. Don't want to be just calling our stack off with Ace Jack high. It's generally not a good habit to get into. Just gonna keep checking here and probably look to bluff river with our ace high. No, nothing. So a lot of people once it checks down here would just auto check back because ace high. But versus a short stack or recreational, we don't really have to worry about that. Like Like we just want to bet and just like get him to fold when he has pocket threes. That really is just the logic here. If we check back there, I don't think we win most of the time. Like I acknowledge that we would probably win some of the time, but I think we pick up the pot much more often when we just go for the bet ourselves. A lot of people find excuses to justify their passivity with the guise of, oh, we have a tiny amount of showdown value. It's like, well, yes, you have a tiny amount and you probably win 2% of the time at showdown, but you'll win 40% of the time when you do go for the bluff, and it just doesn't make sense to, yeah, it just doesn't make sense to do otherwise. This guy pots it into two others. I'm just gonna fold. This is incredibly strong, and I'm just going to strategically overfold. Here, 3-bet or call is fine. Just going to elect to call this time. This is definitely a board we could play leads on, but not with this hand. If we're going to play leads, we want something lower, something with ideally a 5 or an 8, just some interaction with the board here. So here, after it goes check check, I actually like that we have the king of clubs. Just with the naked king of clubs, I'm going to just start going for the overbet. The ace hits him, but we have all the sets, two pairs, straights, and us blocking ace king, ace queen, and the flush draw is just very, very good. And if we had a straight or a set or a two pair, we would want to go overbet. We want to just pile money in as fast as possible. And so we're going to do that as well with our bluffs. Here, after we get the call on the flop on the like a relatively brickish turn, I'm just going to start overbetting. Repping over pairs, sets. Well, really over pairs and sets, basically. But this will put a lot of his range into a super tough spot. Like, it'll put 6x into a tough spot. It'll put all the pocket pairs between the 6 and the jack into a very tough spot. And we have the gut shot there just to give us some backup equity. Bet, bet. Same deal here. A lot of, on the right with ace king, a lot of people would justify checking back ace king with, oh, we have a little bit of showdown value, but you might see some showdown value. I see a gut shot and a blocker to ace jack and king jack. Here versus the donk, we just fold without a heart. Yeah, we get it through. Like, don't level yourself into checking back these kinds of hands because sometimes you have showdown value. Most of your opponent's range is going to be paired after he calls the flop, and you just want to put those pairs into a tough spot, and that's really, really the entire logic. Here, raising or calling is both fine. You're gonna call this time. Once it goes check check, same deal. I'm just going to overbet the river. If we had an ace, we would want to valid bet for the size, so I'm going for the size with the bluff as well. Once again, not really caring in that spot if our blockers aren't ideal. Because yeah, like we've called the flop, we have king high, we never win at showdown, and that's just enough for you to want to go for the bluff there. Just folding the nines here. Not going to be peeling 9-9 out of position to a 4-bet. Playing a 4-bet pot out of position as the preflop caller is kind of the nut low in poker. It's a spot you basically want to avoid at all costs. Versus the min open, going to be defending the queen nine offsuit, but if it were any bigger, I would just fold it. Folding. And folding jack 2 on the button here. Ace-5 going to be a mix between 4-bet and call if we face a 3-bet. I always say that in poker the money is made from running bluffs where you should, because anybody can make a hand and value bet. If your strategy is reliant on the fact that you make a hand and value bet, well, the news I have for you is that you're not going to be making a hand at a higher frequency than your opponents. You and your opponents get dealt the same cards on the same boards, and if you have a set 5% of the time, they also have a set 5% of the time. And if you're value betting your set, they're also value betting their set. And that set is just going to kind of get passed back and forth. And there's no edge to be gained in a spot where, yeah, like you have a set, your opponent has a set. The real edge is gained where you have a bluff that you could run, but your opponent chooses not to run that bluff, but you instead find the bluff. And that's where all the money is made in this game. It's not really made in or sorry, the edge isn't really made in making a set and value betting it because your opponent can do that too. Like any jeweler who like who learned poker 6 hours ago could make a set and value bet it. And if your strategy is reliant upon doing the same thing that the guy that learned poker 6 hours ago is doing, you probably should reevaluate your strategy. The money is made by doing the things that the guy who learned poker 6 hours ago can't do. Here, once it goes check, check. Really like our properties here with the heart and the open ender. I'm just gonna start with an overbet. Very, very aggressively stabbing the check back. Take this line with two pairs, take this line with sets, and we have a very, very clean follow through on heart rivers. We could overbet there as thin as ace jack actually. Top set, always a good start. But not a good ending. A lot of people talk about how they play low stakes and they're having a hard time because they get called everywhere. And I know that's probably what it feels like, but I think that feeling comes from a misunderstanding of what poker is. And I'll explain. In poker, it's really, really, really hard to make a hand. It's really, really hard to make a pair. It's really hard to make top pair. It's really, really hard to make anything stronger than top pair. And so when people talk about, oh, like I can't run a bluff in low stakes because like people will never fold top pair. It's like, yeah, okay, sure. They'll never fold top pair, but they shouldn't fold top pair. Top pair is unless the board is very wet and connected and scary, top pair is almost always a call down. So it's not even just that your opponents are like making a mistake calling down top pair. Like they're just doing what they should. But what a lot of people don't think about is that because it's so hard to make a pair, very often we have to call down second pair as well. And even at low stakes, people won't be just putting a bunch of money in with second pair. The money is made in making your opponents fold second pair when they should be calling second pair. And yeah, if you bluff and your opponent snaps you off with top pair, that's fine. That's how it should be. That's just the game. It's okay. It's okay to call down with top pair. It's not necessarily a mistake. Granted, there are a lot of exceptions. Don't go like calling down top pair on, I don't know, like queen, 9, 8, jack, flush draw, or some shit, and then blame me for it. Here, just going to be doing a lot of checking back on the 7, 5, 8. Really, really good for small blinds cold call range, which will contain a lot of sets in this region. And I think he recognizes that and starts with a lead. Not full day with the gut shot, but just having to be very, very cautious. Okay, this is really interesting. So he's repping he reps a set on the flop, basically. And now the set's not very happy about this. So that's important to keep in mind. This guy has repped a set on the flop, because on the flop when he pots it, he's saying he has a set. But think about how happy a set is to see this run out. I don't think a set is really that happy to see this run out. And given that context, I think it makes a lot of sense to kind of just put it in. We will have a lot of flushes here. We are calling all our flush draws pure. And this time we run into a flush from him, but generally speaking, when he pots the flop, he's saying he has a set. Turn comes forward to a straight. He kind of hates life with the set. And maybe he goes for value thin on the river with his set on a 4 straight flush completing run out. And then you stick it in his face and he just hates life. That time we did run into a flush, but a flush is going to be a very small portion of his range. It's okay to bluff and get called by a flush. Just like it's okay to rip in queens and get called by aces if this guy has aces. People are going to see the jack in hand and be like, oh, like you made such a big spew. Well, think about what other offsuit hand you have with a club after you call a pot size bet on the flop. It's not really that much. You're calling every flush draw, so you have every flush in your range. You're not really calling that many offsuit club hands because most of them just fold to the pot size bet. So that really just is one of your only real club hands. Checking here, noting that we do have the gutter to the 8 and the pair. It's really important to note. I'm not really sure what to make of this, but I'm just going to fold. Here, once it goes check, 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 he just probably doesn't have anything. I'm going to check and probably look to check call unless he bets enormous. Also good to start with the set, but multi-way we are just going to be checking. And here going to do some randomizing, betting the set, but also checking the set sometimes. You might not expect that. When we do bet, it will be for a small size. Stabbing into 3 people will always be for a small size. And here as well, just going for the small size again. Whenever you're multi-way and facing 2 people, generally big sizes are not used that much. So just going to go small as well with our boat. We have a lot of jack X we can do this with, etc. When this guy check raises, just going to go for the probably I think the size could be fine. Like just go, yeah, just go for the 3-bet. Get called. Nice. You can argue for a jam there as well. Jam I think would be totally fine. What did he have? He probably had a 4. Yeah, he had queen 4. A lot of people, especially live players, lose money because they put in too much. They put in too many big bets multi-way. If you're a live player and you find yourself very often coolered with, say, top pair, top kicker, and like your opponent just always shows up with a set, um, yeah, that's kind of your fault because if you're just making top pair and piling pot size bet on the flop, pot size bet on the turn, pot size bet on the river into 5 people, because that's how live is, yeah, by the time it shows down, your opponent's just going to have some random 2 pair or set. I cannot be more clear. If you're a live player and you feel like you're always getting coolered and you feel like your top pair is always just like cracked by some set or 2 pair, it's because you're overplaying it. It's because you're just betting too big with your top pair into too many people, into too many ranges. Here, giving up with the ace of diamonds. Would be firing if we had a dry, like a random 9 without the diamond, but ace of diamonds is just kind of bad. But as I was saying, like it's just, yeah, man, like it's because you're just fucking putting in too much money versus 3 or 4 ranges with top pair, and top pair just does not want to play for stacks against 4 ranges. It just does not. Going to continue barreling here. Gonna go for overbet size. We could have a 6, we could have a straight. On the flop, our range was kind of merged. We were saying we could have a lot of 1 pair hands, but now we're going to polarize our range on the turn, saying that we have either trips or a straight, basically. And this is a really good hand to do it with. So the question is, do we want to continue telling the story? And I do think yes. Generally speaking, once we've polarized our range on a previous street, we just want to keep telling that story. So I'm gonna go for the all-in. If we had a set or a straight, or sorry, if we had a set, a trips, or a straight, we would just want to bet all in. And so we want to do that with our value as well. Or sorry, our bluffs. Yeah, people just see me kind of yeeting the stack in with Jack 7. It's like, oh, like you're such a sputard. It's like, well, listen. Yes, I am a sputard. But you either have the mentality that people are going to always call to the big bet or always fold to the big bet. Like, if you get to the river with a value hand and your logic is, oh, I'm going to bet. I don't really know what to make of this. Like, it's a recreational. He's just kind of like doing some weird shit. I'm just gonna fucking flick it in. Okay, he has a set. That's fine. Um, what I'm trying to say is, if you get to the river and your mentality is, oh, I want to bet small with my value to make sure he calls. Well, that implies that you're betting small because you're afraid that he's going to fold to a big bet. Because if you thought he wouldn't fold to a big bet, you would bet big for value. But if you think that he folds to a big bet, then you should be bluffing for a big bet. You can't just like value bet small because you think your opponent's going to fold when you bet huge, but then also not bet huge when you're bluffing. It just doesn't make sense. Um, if that line of logic doesn't make sense for you, maybe slow the video down and watch it again and really think about what I mean there. I've seen a lot of people error 4-4 out over that logic. I think I might have made a mistake here. I think I might have gotten too into talking and kind of stabbed a hand I shouldn't. Yeah, this was probably a mistake on my part. And now we get punished. It's okay. Uh, Ace high here. I think probably we can just check back. But really looking to bluff a lot of lower stuff. 3-bet with aces. I think with the ace 5 offsuit there, I made a mistake. Kind of just wasn't thinking. Here versus the cold 4, actually in position, going to be just trapping aces 100% of the time. Jamming hands like ace king and kings, but aces is just strong enough to trap and play in position. If it were out of position, it'd be a completely different story. Versus the check, just going to go for a small bet, start to get some money in. We'll be stepping very wide with our unpaired hands as well. Here with the queen on the right, I'm going to be looking to get our stack in. Just calling here with aces. Once the flush draw comes in, I'm going to check. I'm never really folding, especially since this is a short stack to begin with. But it's just about how do we get the money in the most efficient way. And yeah, we check, give him an opportunity to spaz off if he has a bluff. I'm just going to jam here as well. Call here. Oh, this guy just doesn't have a bluff, has top out this time. Or top set. It is what it is. Here, just jamming with the aces because it's a double flush draw board. There's pretty much a lot of flush draws we can jam. Like any flush draw we have, we would just jam it in. So very comfortable doing that with our aces as well. If it were a bit of a drier board, I would consider maybe checking back. Starting off with small bet here. Man, I feel like this session has been very, very action-packed. I feel like the last video I made, there just was a lot of downtime between hands. But this one's good. There's a lot to talk about, a lot going on. Here, bet or check is both fine with Jack 10, or sorry, with 10-9. Gonna check it back this time. It's just one of those hands we want to stab occasionally, but also check occasionally. Okay, so just calling here with 10-9, very clear call. And here, I'm just going to lead turn with an overbet again. When we bet here, we're basically saying that we have a straight or a set, and those hands just want to pile money in. Having the queen being the gut shot to the nuts gives us good blocker properties and a little bit of backup equity as well. Yeah, none of that pussy stabbing for 3/4 shit. If you're repping the nuts or nothing, that means you have to go big. You know what they say, small bets, small PP. Don't have a small PP. They're probably going to play about for another 5 minutes or so and then call it. Man, I hope you guys can't hear me chewing my bubble tea. That would be very annoying if you guys could. Leave a comment if you can hear me chewing my bubble tea, and I will not drink it while making videos in the future. Okay, 6-7 will be 3-bet. Okay, so on the low board, a little bit deeper, going to start off with a big bet. Just repping over pairs, and our over pairs want to go big, so we'll just be going big with our bluffs. Here as well, just going to continue firing. Would be continue firing with any over pairs. And yeah, we get to the river here, and there's no kind of letting it go. Like on this run out, all of our over pairs want to play for stacks. We have 6 high. It doesn't really matter that we block the flush draw. Just going to put it in. Gonna hammer finding the hero call with ace king. You might see this and think like, oh, like this guy super owned us. But truth be told, I'm looking at this and it's probably a call at equilibrium. It's probably not that far from just a standard call. Like you might be very surprised, but he does block my main value, which is aces and kings, and he also does He also does fuck, what are words? He also beats all my bluffs. Like he has absolute showdown value versus all of my bluffing range. Um, and if you sim it out, it's probably a call at some frequency. And what I'm trying to say is that when people make these like superhero calls against you, very often it's not as much of a hero call as you think. Like very often it's just part of an equilibrium strategy, and you play your half and you're aggressive, and they play their half, and sometimes they have to put their foot down. And it just is what it is. Looking forward to all the people in the comments calling me a sweetheart, and honestly, I am a sweetheart. But poker is about spewing in a productive way. It's about spewing in a way that's productive and credible. And if you rip an overpair, you should run a bluff like you have an overpair. Okay, what's our time here? Okay, so we're coming up on 30 minutes, so I'm going to sit out on next big blind. I'm putting one of these videos out every week. I will say a lot of the stuff you see here, maybe don't try it live. If you're playing live poker, maybe don't try it live. Live people are generally a little slower on the take and unable to let go of the full button. Maybe. Depends. It's poker's a complicated game. Everything just depends. I wish I had an absolute answer for you guys. It's like, oh, like bluff live or don't bluff live. It's like, well, game's complicated. Sometimes you should, and sometimes you shouldn't. Sometimes you should, and sometimes you shouldn't. And that's basically everything. So I'll be putting these videos out once a week. If you like these videos, just thumbs up, subscribe, helps the channel. All those things. And we'll just play on this table on the right until we get set out. Should be any moment now. Okay, that'll be it, guys. We'll see you all next week.